Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of TEDx from Home. Today we are delighted to be joined by Bertie Van Wyk, a workplace specialist with expertise in grasping emerging trends and the changing business processes. Through his immense knowledge on human-centric design and workplace development, he has equipped organizations and individuals with the skills to become more productive, healthy, and connected in work. Thus, his work covers a variety of topics, including, but not limited to, the future of work, cognitive design, collaboration, the science behind happiness, and well-being in general workplace design, which we will be discussing in this interview today. Bertie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. So we're going to go right into the questions. And Tina, if you'd like to get us started.
Okay, so the first topic we want to talk about today is working from home. And for our first question regarding this topic, we understand that working from home has obviously seen a huge rise in popularity over the last few months, but it has also brought about quite a lot of struggles. So, how can someone effectively and productively work from home?
So I think one of the biggest things you have to do is you have to set a strategy for the day. And I actually have one of these which I'd like to share with you. So this is an action plan from Herman Miller on working from home. Herman Miller does incredible research on how to learn, how to heal, the environments where we actually work, whether that's the office or the home. And this is a really good strategy that you can follow every day when working from home. So the first thing that we look at is, of course, a dedicated work time. Now, with dedicated work time, what we're trying to say here is make sure you set your core hours. If you like to start a little bit earlier and finish a little bit earlier, that's fine. If you like to start a little bit later and finish a little bit later, that's also fine. But set those hours and stick to it so that you ensure that you're not working at some crazy hours in a day. The other thing that we say is also kind of, when you dedicate your work time, make sure that you're also dressed for the day. So just in case someone actually calls in and making sure that you actually look the way that you want to look. Set your priorities for the day, create a top 3 and start with those. And then just make sure that all your virtual meetings are actually confirmed. Next up, we say, make sure you've got working technology. Now, at Herman Miller, what we do is we ask all our employees to every night switch off their computers or their laptops so that in the morning, when it goes back on, the software update is actually engaged. So we try and make sure that you actually do that. Also, what we're trying to do is make sure you've got a nice background so that if people call you, that you're happy with the background that they're seeing, and make sure that your audio visual checks have been done. If you've got a really big meeting just like this, do a test run if you need to, just so that you're not stressed when you're having that meeting. And then if you're participating in a meeting and you're not speaking, you're not taking part, make sure that your mic is actually switched off and also maybe your video. It just helps with the bandwidth. Next up, we got communicating needs. Now, quite simply, we can resolve so many problems if we just communicate better. So tell your boss what you need to get your best work done. Tell your team and your colleagues what you need to get your best work done. But then also, very importantly, tell your family and communicate to your housemates if you have them. This is what I need to get my best work done. It just really helps with us working in a much better environment. Then we talk about committing to your health. So a lot of us spending so much time at home, maybe even cooking a lot more. Think about the food that you're having and maybe make a few healthier choices. And think about also making sure that you eat enough. Nobody wants to get hungry in a day. The other thing that we talk about is if you can, try and make sure that you get outside, that you commit to your health by exercising, if that's stretching in the morning, even if you're doing yoga in the morning, anything like that is really, really good for your body and for your health. The idea here is we have to get up and move as much as possible. And then second to last, we've got dedicate downtime. Now, a lot of people forget about this very simple trick. And what we do is you book in time into your calendar that's just for you. It doesn't have to be a meeting, doesn't have to be anything else important. but it's time dedicated just to you. If you want to get up in that and go outside and relax a little bit, or try and get some other work done, it just ensures that no one fills your whole calendar with too many meetings, and that you do have time to take breaks like you would have if you were in the actual office. But schedule those breaks in and try and make sure that you have a few of them in a day, and don't let anyone mess with that. If you want to meditate, if you want to daydream in that, that is your time for the day. And then last but not least, you do need a dedicated workspace. And by this I mean, if you've got an enclosed office, that's fantastic. But if you don't, like a lot of us or most of us, it can be quite difficult. So what we say is set up a workstation for yourself for that day. Make sure you've got the right tools and technology. Is your screen at exactly the right height so that you don't get tech neck? I mean, you can't sit in your bed the whole day and try and do emails. It's really bad for your health. So what we do is, on the day, set yourself a workstation, a dedicated workspace, and make sure that that is yours for the day. At the end of the day, if you're, say, sharing a space or it's at the dining table, pack it all away. It just makes you switch off in your mind and just completely relaxes you. My space here right now is a dining table, and then it's a yoga studio in the morning, and then it becomes my workspace, which we share. And at the end of the day, it all gets moved away, and it just gives me that psychological safety of the day is done.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bertie. And going on to our next question. So one clear topic that really did arise from that discussion is well-being and mental health in employees. So our question is, what can employers actually do to help employees if they approach them saying that they're suffering from the mental toll of working from home?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, there's quite a few things that employees can do and the actual company can do. The first thing, of course, is the physical environment. I mean, the way you sit directly affects your cognition. So how well you can concentrate, how good you feel during a day. Do I have a pain in my neck and my back coming through? So the actual physical environment gets looked after when you're in the office with, say, a health and safety manager. But who's the person looking after that when you're working from home? So that's one of the first places that you can look at, is supporting your employees and going, what is the environment that you're in and how are you properly supported? Do you have the right chair? Is the screen at the right height? Do you have the right setup for you to be able to work healthfully from home? On the other side that we talk about is the actual teamwork. And this is really important from an organization to train the leadership team. Really, really important. So if you're leading up a team, the first thing that we say is you have to understand that it's a challenge of inclusion. A lot of people don't feel like they're included anymore because they're spending so much time working from home and not seeing everyone else. So great team leaders understand that for me to create a healthy, productive virtual team is I have to make sure that everyone's being heard. Am I checking in on them? Do they feel that they still have a sense of purpose? Do they feel that they still belong to this organization? So that's one of the first points that we do. Secondly, what you can do as a team is become unsynchronized. Now, it's almost the opposite of what other people are saying, but the idea here is when we got into lockdown, people started filling your calendar with video calls every hour on the hour, and your whole day became so tiring because you didn't have any time to do your own work because you were just doing meetings. So what we say is become unsynchronized. Use these great technology tools available to you like Microsoft Teams, like Google Docs, that allows you to work on a team project at the time that best suits you. Not the time that your manager is online, that you're trying to see that you're actually working those exact same hours. So the idea here is this stops you from sending emails at 10 o'clock in the evening, but also just allows you to work productively at the time that best suits you. Other key thing that we say here is we try to get people to have meetings, maybe schedule those meetings for 50 minutes, not an hour, just so you can get a little bit of a break, stand up, get blood circulation through the body, more oxygen to the lungs, and you can move around your space and relax just a little bit just like you would if you were in the office, and changing from meeting rooms and grabbing a cup of coffee. So the idea is just maybe become unsynchronized and understand that that is actually okay. Next up, we talk about creating co-located protocols. So when some people are back in the office and a lot of people are actually working from home and they're lonely and they don't feel that they're being included, is this the people that are in the office have to make sure that they don't exclude others that are not currently in the space. So when you've got a big topic, a big subject matter that you need to discuss with everyone, make sure the videos are switched on. Make sure you check in with everyone within 10 minutes that's all working from home. Every 10 minutes, just make sure there's no one that has got something to say. And just make it easier for people to actually contribute in that situation. Another simple way of doing that is actually just creating an agenda so everyone's prepared for that specific meeting. And then second to last, we talk about understanding that the challenge is making people more social. Because if I'm in the office, I can meet some people, or I can just hear some other people in the buzz. But I can't do that if I'm at home. So one of the biggest things that we say is maybe try and have virtual coffee breaks. Twice a week, schedule a nice coffee break. Don't talk about work. Talk about all the other things that you want to talk about and just connect with people. In our organization, we had on every Thursday after work, we have a virtual kind of quiz night. You can dress up if you want, you can bring a drink if you want, and it's optional. If this isn't really your cup of tea, what we would recommend is maybe for your team, create a little WhatsApp group. Just create a little WhatsApp group where you can share a meme or what you ate or just that little bit of social connection, which we have when we're in the office, but we don't have it when we're working from home. And then last but not least, one of the biggest things that we talk about is managing performance. Now, a lot of people struggling with issues right now is because they're on the brink of burnout. And this is so scary and so terrifying because we're not really checking in on people. So if you have a big social connection with people and you ask someone how they're doing, they might just say they're doing fine when they're not. The other thing that we have to be careful of is organizations that measured performance based on whether you were in the office, so measuring attendance. They basically were just measuring obedience, not actually performance. So we need to change our styles to, if you're not already, to outcome-based performance. Give me a task and trust me to be able to complete that in the time that suits me. And then last thing I want to say with this is, if you're a manager, make sure you check in with every one of your team members at least once a week and do it by phone. Don't do another video call where we look at videos of ourselves, or we look at the other person, we try and match it up and it doesn't really match up, and we get really, really tired of all these video calls. Just pick up the phone, give them a call and really listen to how they're doing and how they're feeling.
Great, thank you, Bertie.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And earlier you mentioned working technology as well as how working from home does require a large reliance on technology. To expand on this topic a little bit, for large multinational companies, this isn't a problem. Like larger firms can afford to invest in these technologies, they have IT teams, but smaller businesses as well as startups often can't. And we recognize that there is this unfair advantage. So, what sort of advice would you give to these smaller firms to avoid this unfair gap?
I would actually like to kind of almost twist that around. I sometimes think that even organizations like startups have the actual unfair advantage. They've been adapting these models, these flexible workings, this continual changing all the time. A lot of thing with the traditional larger organizations is they're kind of big kind of oil tankers. They're very, very difficult to maybe adapt very quickly. So I think with a lot of the technology available right now, smaller organizations sometimes have the advantage because they can adapt so quickly. They can adapt in where they work from. They can adapt in their working styles. There's incredible technology available for you to work in teams online too, like Miro. So all these things that are available is also getting cheaper and more accessible. So I would just make sure that organizations look at what's available to them, engage much more with your head of IT if you're a medium-sized business to understand some of the incredible things that's available to you, because I've recently seen a lot of large organizations suffering to adapt to the change that's happening, even with the technology that they have. So I sometimes find that the smaller organizations are more nimble and find it more easy to actually adapt to this current crisis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bertie. Yeah, it's a real interesting sort of sense of irony in how we perceive unfair
Yeah.
gaps in the current climate at the moment. But I think one thing as well is that in terms of going on from costs as well, is working from home does require equipment. It requires ergonomic chairs, raised desks, and we recently found out that Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, announced plans to give employees a $1,000 reimbursement scheme to help with buying equipment when it comes to working from home. Obviously, not all companies are Google, not all companies can afford to do this. So how can you effectively work from home on a low budget?
A very, very good question. Just so you know, I'm seeing loads of different organizations actually starting to make this investment too, because we know if the way you sit, your posture, actually affects your cognition. So how well you can concentrate, so how productive you are in a day. So organizations from various different sizes are actually trying to ensure that when people are working from home, they're doing it very well. But there are a few tricks you can do to make sure that you're working better from home. The first thing that I would recommend is make sure that you're close to a natural light source. So natural light, I mean, it has an effect on our hormones, on your moods. Natural light's fantastic for all of it. The other great thing about it is normally there's a window you can open, and oxygen is really good for the way you work. Then the second point is, which is very, very important, is you have to police your posture. So you have to make sure that your posture is in the right way. So when I'm standing up like I do right now, I've got an S curve in my spine. And when you sit, say, on a sofa or a dining chair, you start to slouch back. And that's real pain and damage you're doing to your body. If your screen isn't at the right height, so say your laptop screen at exactly the height of your eyebrow, basically you just start leaning over. And your head's as heavy as a bowling ball. And it creates pain in your neck and in your spine and your back. So the idea is we have to try and police your posture as much as humanly possible. So if you're sitting at a dining chair at home, try and put a cushion behind your back just to make sure that your spine looks the same way it does when you're standing up. Or try and change the position of your computer too, which is a really, really good trick. Take your laptop, stack it on some books. The key around this is to get yourself, say, either a wireless keyboard and mouse or a wired one, but just a separate keyboard and mouse. Stack your keyboard on anything, on books, or maybe other spaces in your home. If you've got a cupboard that's the right height, stack it on there, and then use a separate keyboard and mouse that just creates that automatic correct posture, because your head needs to be supported by your whole spine. So that's one of the tricks we do. I've seen people do really cool things like using ironing boards to get to the exact right height as a nice way to kind of making sure that the body is supported in the right way. But just a really big thing is to make sure that you move as much as possible. A lot of the times when we're working from home, people forget how important this is. It's extremely important. At least every hour, 2 minutes of walking around really can reduce your chances of premature death by 33%. And that's every hour, not just exercise at the end of the day, that's every hour of you working. So movement is extremely important. Just a few little tricks.
Great,
Thank you.
I'll definitely be employing some of those.
Same. Definitely the book thing and my posture.
Great.
So the next topic that we actually wanted to discuss was returning to the workplace post-COVID-19.
Yep.
And the first question we have for this is, when people do return to work, their schedule is likely to have changed drastically.
Yeah.
So will we ever see the usual 9 to 5 schedule again, or will there be a change?
See, that's the real trick here is we've been given autonomy. We right now have been given trust and flexibility. To try and take that away completely really wouldn't work. It would really backfire for any organization. But the key here is to find an actual balance. Also, so that's the one element around it. The other element is returning to the actual physical workplace. It's not just one thing that's going to make people feel that it's okay to go back. It has to be a bundled approach. In medical fields, they talk about a safety bundle. So not just one thing, but a few things that, if you work very well together, delivers a better outcome for patients. And in the office environment, it will have to be the same. So the first thing that we will look at is, say, organizational culture. So in your organizations, is it okay for someone to bring up any safety concerns? Can I stay home if I feel a little bit sick? Which we should have done even before COVID-19. Can I work? If I work from home very well, why should I go back? If I don't have to, then maybe allow me to work from home. That's just your organizational culture. Other things that we talk about is, secondly, is teaching and guidelines. How clear are your guidelines? How clear are your teachings? What is your point of view and how do you get to that? How often is that communicated? Are people discouraged from using someone else's phone? So I've got a nice picture of my dog. Do you want to have a look at it? Am I going to touch your phone? That's all going to be part of, say, the teaching and guidelines within an organization. And then you get to the actual physical environment, the built environment. And here we want to make sure, are there places for me to clean my hands everywhere? Like every kind of junction where people walk past each other, high kind of walk rate. At every one of those spaces, is there somewhere where I can clean my hands? Is the space in the office that I'm going into cleaned often and visibly in front of everyone and communicated over and over? And is there clear signage, complete clear signage? This is how we want you to act. This is what we would like you to do. The doors in the meeting rooms are open so that you don't touch the door handle, so we'd like to keep them completely open. So, like, all these things need to be clear and concise. When all these things work together, that's called a safety bundle, and it improves the environment for everyone. And that's what we'll really need when we're going back into the office. But we'll also need the flexibility, of course.
Thank you.
So you spoke a lot about design and open doors just then. So will the design of offices actually be much different? How are they going to change? What are they going to look like?
I actually have some examples I can share with you. So some of the examples I can actually share with you is based on these four things. So we want to create physical distancing in an actual office, not social distancing. So remember, use the right terminology too, even if you're speaking to your own employees in your company. So it is physical distancing, not social distancing. And these are some of the guidelines from, say, the CDC, the World Health Organization. It's moving between 3 feet to 6 feet, but these are guidelines around, say, 2 meters, the 6 feet. We do this, we create these physical distancing with four elements, four key things, and that is spacing, so enough space between users, of course, orientation, so just pointing people in a different direction, boundaries, so creating boundaries and barriers between spaces, and then flexibility. So flexibility within the office itself, so I can choose different environments for me to work in. And flexibility as in I can work from home, I can work from the coffee shop, I can work from my local co-working space, and I can work in the office. So let's look at some key design examples that people are looking at right now. So this just gives you an example of a typical floor plate right now. We would expect, so if you look at the design on the right, where the green dots are, that's where people will be allowed to sit on a normal standard floor plate. So a 50% reduction in overall seat count, a 37% reduction in desks, a 71% reduction in open group seats, and a 40% reduction in enclosed group seats. So this is kind of a standard. The numbers and reductions sound really, really heavy and really bad, but realistically, on average, most offices are normally just occupied at around about 50%. Everyone thinks their space is full, but there's usually some additional space. So there are some really good news around this too. But let me give you some examples of what you currently might have in your space and the options available to you. So at Herman Miller, we look at, say, fixed height desks first. So on the left-hand side, you can say if that was your standard kind of 6-person bench, you can only sit where the green dots are. But on the right-hand side, you can see if you create a little bit of barriers, which will be needed, maybe some storage on the side with sanitizing stations, you'll be able to sit on day 1 where the green dots are, and day 2 where the white dots are. So on Monday, we sit on the green dots, and on Tuesday, we flip it around to the other ones. Another good idea around this that we would recommend is maybe remove 3 of the chairs. When you remove 3 of the chairs, it gives no one the option to actually squeeze in right next to someone else and just makes it a little bit easier. But on the same thing with fixed height, you can use on the same space, maybe we can try and fit 4 people in on the same day by just changing it to this. So if you just add returns to the ends of the desks, remove 2 chairs, basically you create the same space, but now you've got 4 people you can fit in instead of 3. So let's look at sit-stand desks. So of course, sit-stand desks are mandatory in our Scandinavian countries, but loads of different countries and regions and companies are starting to adopt this. So if you look at a sit-stand desk on the left-hand side, that's what a normal cluster of 6 looked like. But now, kind of key things that we talk about, it's separated into individual clusters. So there's a barrier between the people sitting there. And another key thing that we say is we increased screen heights and changed to hard-faced materials for easy cleaning. If we put a hard-faced material in there, it's going to be much easier for you to wipe it off 2 or 3 times a day. Let's look at individual work points. So individual work points, you can see on the left-hand side, that's what 3 spaces would have looked like, maybe pushed up against the wall. But now you still need to create the barriers between people just to make them feel a little bit safer too. So on day 1, you'll sit where the green dots are. On day 2, in between. And just some other key ideas. There's simple ways of things that take up minimum amount of floor space that still provides you a space for people to work. So little booths like these, just pointed in different directions, instantly gives you an extra 3 spaces in the environment where people can work individually. Let's look at collaborative settings. So I always get the question here about what happens in a collaborative setting. Remember, we look at spacing, orientation, boundaries, and flexibility to create the right environment. So if you look on the left-hand side, that's what a normal space would look like. But if we remove the lounge and side seating, suddenly you can change the environment so that there's more actual usable space. Increase spacing between the high back sofas, you point them in the other direction, that you create additional boundaries, and now every chair that's there is actually usable. And just think about your meeting rooms too. One of the biggest things that we talk about in meeting rooms is realistically the best idea would be to remove some of the chairs. If the chairs stay in the space, people will just bunch up together. They just can't help themselves. So one of the best ideas would be remove some of the chairs, or if you can, maybe bring in some additional desks so that you ensure people actually keep the spaces between them. Now let's just look at one shot of a complete open environment. And again, there's a lot of things to talk about in just simple spaces like this. When we arrive at the office, simple things like doing infrared temperature checking is important for everyone coming in and out of the office every single time they do that. But when you come into the space, you want to feel safe too. So in a normal setup like on the left-hand side, we can make quite a lot of changes to ensure that we maximize and get more people into the space. Even like taking the little small tables from the left-hand side, creating a little barrier, and you create a little meeting space with enough distancing between people so that they feel comfortable to actually use it.
Thank you. And despite the design changes that could be done, I'm sure there's still going to be a lot of worry with the staff, and people are still going to be very cautious about catching COVID-19 when they do return to work. So do you think this worry would still harm the team morale or general well-being of these staff?
Yes, I think people are still worried, and if people have real concerns, they should have a safe environment to be able to talk to the leadership about it. The real thing around this is when people are ready to go back into the office, we need to allow them. There are some people that really cannot work from home. The Leesman Index showed us that 19% of people right now are really struggling. The environment that they're in is not conducive for them to be able to get the work done that they're being paid to do. So those people need to be able to go back into the space as quickly as possible. And then you can start looking at the staff that really need to be in this space and create a program and a plan for them to do that. The real thing that we actually see is there's actually a real big drive now for people wanting to, even if it's just one day, go back already to say, I just want that social connection. There's a simple saying in Herman Miller, we say, you plus me equals 3. So I can have a good idea, you can have a good idea. But when we come together, we can deliver something significantly better. So it's when we go into the office, it's that 5 minutes before the meeting and the 15 minutes after the meeting where you overhear things, and that's what makes the idea grows. So that's the idea, that's the thing that we're after. We want that connection when we go back into space.
Thank you. And the next topic we wanted to discuss was the future of the workplace. So, Rob, do you want to ask the first question?
Absolutely. So, Bertie, we found that critics say the future of the workplace seems somewhat uncertain, and this is going even beyond COVID-19. To start us off, do you think companies will now see a lesser need for offices? And if so, what is the plan for what's going to happen to these now near empty buildings?
I think there's always going to still be a need for offices. I think we just have to rethink about the real use of them. So the thing is, we all like working flexibly. You know, working from home 2 to 3 days a week, working in the office 2 to 3 days a week is fantastic. Gallup gives us some incredible statistics around what happens if you allow people to work from home and the actual office and how it impacts the level of engaged staff. But what we're really after, what we really need to understand is simple. If you make a good friend in the office, not a best friend, a good friend in the office, you're 50% more satisfied doing the exact same job. If you make a best friend in the office, you're 7 times more likely to engage fully in the organization. And that's the thing about what we really want. We still want that community. We want to go into the office because we want that community, but it has to be the right option for us. So we don't see the end of the office because, as I said and shared some numbers with you, is a lot of people are suffering working from home. The other thing to understand is a lot of people are significantly more productive currently, but they also benefit from the relationships of all the people that they've met in the office, all the people that they've established really good connections with that allows them to do their job better. But what if someone joins your organization? What if somebody joins your team? What if teams move around? How am I going to meet those other people that will allow us to come up with the new random ideas that will drive our business forward? So the office of the future is still actually the office. It'll just be a much better experience when you go in. It'll be a space for you to go and get great individual work done, but also collaborate very, very well in a nice, safe environment.
Thank you. And a little bit expanding on that topic, with working from home becoming as popular as it has been, do you think that a 4-day working week would?
I believe a 4-day working week would definitely 100% work. I think the best example that I've seen is Microsoft Japan. In Microsoft Japan, what they did is for the month of August in 2019, they gave everyone Friday off. This is 2,300 people. They closed the building. And for all this 2,300 people, they paid them the same, and they just gave them the Friday off. And happiness went through the roof. People were more relaxed, their meetings went quicker, but the real number is the important thing, and this is what they quote: productivity increased by 40%. So 40% increase in productivity. People were more relaxed, they weren't as stressed, and they made better decisions. So for the whole month of August, they did this and increased productivity by 40%. They didn't keep on doing it, so I would love to see them actually doing it again. But I truly believe that there is a real case for us moving to a 4-day week, or even significantly reducing the hours of a normal work day. Because I think in a normal company, with all the interruptions we waste about 2.1 hours every day in any case. So maybe we can look at a different example of maybe reducing the hours, the core hours, maybe with an hour or two for people to actually get more productive. So the idea around this is I can get more done by actually doing less work, which I think is a really, really great idea. So yes, sign me up for a 4-day work week any day.
I agree.
Me too.
Yes.
And one other workplace design movement that really did start to get super popular pre-COVID-19 was hot desking.
Yes.
And for those who aren't sure, would you mind explaining what hot desking actually is?
Okay.
And then go on to explain whether COVID-19 has brought about the end of this particular workplace design movement.
Okay, so hot desking is actually quite a negative term. We actually like to call it flexible desking, but hot desking and flexible desking is when you go into an office and the desks aren't allocated to you. Whoever comes in first, they get to pick where they want to sit, and basically it's not your own dedicated space. Now there's two little tricky points around this. You asked me whether the COVID-19 means the end of hot desking. I actually think it might mean the opposite. I think you'll see more of this. And the idea around this is actually a lot of organizations waste a ton of space. They think everyone's in and people are in meetings, they're traveling, they're out of the office, they go to all these places, and you basically have buildings that are occupied maybe 50% of the time, which is really, really shocking. So the idea around this is when you create flexible workspaces, like, say, hot desking, it allows more people to, when they work from home, come in and have a space, but you create better spaces in the gaps that you create. So if I have 100 people and I have 100 desks, it doesn't allow necessarily a lot of space for me to have nice breakout spaces. But if I just tell everyone to work from home 1 day a week, that means I need, say, 20% less desks. Suddenly it opens up the environment for me to do more creative things, like better breakout spaces, nicer focus spaces. Now, of course, I'm not saying everyone should have 100% hot desking or flexible workstations throughout their space. It's what's right for your organization. Some love it, some it works really well, but for some, it's really not the answer. So some organizations, for the type of work that gets delivered, they have assigned workstations. And I would never change that for them because it works very, very well. There's truly someone sitting in there every day working at that desk. So it's about finding the right balance, maybe even between departments or within the organization itself, to find what level of assigned workstations and flexible workstations you might need. But in the post-COVID-19 world, when organizations start looking differently about who's coming in on what day, what is the point on giving everyone an actual workstation if they're not going to be in the office for 3 days in the week? So this flexible working, I believe we'll see more of it. And when you provide this, you have to do it very well though. The biggest problem that people have with these spaces is that they put too many of them in and it's too noisy. There's too much distraction. So you need to have spaces close by. In Helmer Miller we call them havens. Just a space where you can go and hide without interruptions, without having to book that space, and get some serious work done, or take a personal phone call, or anything like that, without having to worry about the noise within the space. So if you want to use those spaces very well, it's about providing the right variety and choice within the space for people to be able to work the best way they can.
Thank you. And looking at technology, but in the future of the workplace, a lot of critics say that technology has and will continue to see a rapid increase post COVID-19. And how do you think this is going to affect our work life? And will those that aren't trained in certain software be left behind?
Great question. I think the future is here. I mean, it's now. It's already part of everything that we're doing. And in Miller, when we look at all these things, we look at future plans. And when we look at technology, we like to call it, we say, the machines work for us. Rather put a little bit of a better spin on it. But the thing here is AI is here, or automation is actually here. And it's quite worrying because, say, 64% of people actually trust a robot more than they do their line manager. So there's some real terrifying statistics around this. But technology will change the value that you and I actually bring to work. So organizations will focus on hiring people who have empathy, humility, things like emotional intelligence. These are going to become extremely important, things that AI or automation cannot copy. The other thing that we talk about to recognize that these things are already here is a focus on ambient technology. So gaming technology being used for training within spaces or in offices, or the same technology being used for wayfinding. Where do I go? Where do I find this? There are apps in offices right now, which is, most offices will actually get one of these, that will tell you where's a free desk, where is a good meeting space, make additional suggestions for you, where is the person I'm looking for, where's the community meeting happening, what events are happening after work, can I change the light of the space that I'm sitting in, can I change the temperature of the space I'm sitting in. All of this will just be automatically available to you. And then things like voice control. I mean, Alexa for Business is already here. And you want to put those in every meeting room, in any space to control your diary. It's basically like a virtual assistant. Of course, you have to be a little bit more careful putting that into open plan environments because noise levels are already a big issue. But data literacy is extremely important. The whole organization will be collecting data, and a cross-functional team will be needed to analyze that and then implement the findings. Because it's about implementing, not just getting the data back. Companies like Deloitte, for instance, they use like live tracking to make sure that people actually don't burn out. Companies like Workingden provide one website for their employees, for any employees that you can sign up to when they're working from home or working in an office, to make sure that they don't have burnout, their health and safety checks, and that their physical and mental well-being is looked after every day, and anyone can sign up to that. And then the other key thing that we talk about is when you start getting scared about all this technology, be very glad that green technology is on the up. Anything that makes the world better, the environment better, that's things that we will all be investing with. We'll be voting with our feet. We'll start working for those organizations and where we spend money. Because when countries do nothing and large organizations don't do anything, we will follow the organizations that we know are making the world a better place. So there's some worries around technology, but there's also some light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bertie. And for our final question, we'd like to revisit COVID-19, and I'm sure we can all agree that COVID-19 has been a devastating global event, and we know that it has severely affected everyone's daily lives. However, it is interesting to note the surge in working from home, the increased awareness in our key workers, and the digital transformation. Do you personally think these implications of COVID-19 would have happened regardless of the global pandemic?
Well, I think the key workers thing should have happened much, much earlier, like much, much earlier. In some places, they are appreciated more than other places. Things around property, around working from home, all of these things were already happening. It's just accelerated very, very, very quickly. So all these innovations that people think are innovations, they were really already in place. A lot of organizations have just been very slow to adapt. And they really right now had no choice and had to quickly learn to get there. But the idea here is, I think a lot of these innovations are also kind of good for us. Giving people flexibility, treating them like human beings, allowing people to go drop their kids off when they need to, work on the schedule that suits them, if they've got family to look after, if they've got traveling issues. It just really widens this up and allows us to treat our staff, our colleagues, our team members in a much more human and brilliant way.
Great. Thank you very much, Bertie. And that does conclude our interview. Thank you very much to all our viewers for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of TEDx from Home. Bertie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for
Thank
having me.
you.
Cheers, guys.